Hi, I'm Poppy Gay, co-founder and co-CEO of accelerateHER, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the next session of the day. I'm really delighted to bring this session on FinTech to you, given the enormity of the theme here in Africa. So the next session will include three phenomenal speakers who are all themselves leaders in driving greater innovation and financial inclusion within the FinTech industry. So you will hear firsthand their views on the future of what is often described as the defining sector of the tech ecosystem across Africa. Before we go in, let me please firstly briefly introduce you to our wonderful moderator, Lebo Mokgabudi, who will then intro you to our speakers, Yolanda and Bilha. Lebo is a digital financial services expert with over 10 years experience building digital transformation solutions in Africa and Asia. She was part of Fundamo, the company acquired by Visa, that expanded mobile money operations beyond Kenya and has since developed digital financial solutions that enabled financial inclusion in underserved communities. Lebo is currently the Catalyst Fund South Africa country manager. Catalyst Fund, if you don't know, is an inclusive FinTech accelerator that offers flexible grant capital and tailored venture building support to inclusive FinTech startups in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So without further ado, Lebo, please take it from here.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us for this fantastic conversation with amazing women in the FinTech world. My name is Lebogang Mokgabudi. I am the country manager for Catalyst Fund, leading operations in South Africa for Catalyst Fund, which is an inclusive FinTech accelerator that supports inclusive FinTech startups in emerging markets. But here with me, I have Yolanda Tuba, as well as Bilha, and may I ask them to please introduce yourselves, ladies. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lebo, and it's great to be here. Just by way of introduction, my name is Yolanda Tuba. I'm the head of FinTech and Digital at MTN. Basically, what I do is look after all our digital and FinTech play across the markets that MTN actually operates in.
Thank you, Yolanda. Bilha, may I ask you to please introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for having me here. My name is Bilha Ndirango. I'm the CEO of Africa's Talking. So we are a tech company headquartered in Kenya, but with offices across 18 markets on the continent. And our core mission is to make infrastructure such as communication and payments infrastructure a lot more accessible to software developers who are trying to build solutions facing the continent.
Fantastic. Digital products, digital services, as well as infrastructure. It's a great panel to have. Maybe let me start with you, Yolanda. Please tell us about your priorities and your passion when it comes to building technology of the future.
Yeah, I guess, let's start off with the way MTN puts, what MTN puts at the core of whatever we do. And the first thing that we put at the core of what we do is to say that everyone deserves the benefits of a modern connected life. That means we believe in inclusiveness as a core part of our digital transformation and the core part of the 4IR kind of evolution. So when we look at specifically then FinTech, we actually look at it and say, how can we provide accessible and cheap enough or affordable solutions to everybody in the Middle East and in Africa. And for me, that's really what gets me up in the morning. It's basically going out there every day and actually creating solutions that is able to actually further the lives of people that would normally not have been included, whether through infrastructure, through FinTech solutions, through digital solutions. So if I look at, for example, the kind of impact that we've had in terms of looking at specifically women, right, who are less likely to actually, for example, have internet connections. Women are 23% less likely to be using internet, 10% likely to have a mobile phone. And for us, these are the things that we want to actually get to solve. And then when I look at specifically at FinTech, I start off with saying, I know the banks will kill me. They had 100 years to include everybody in the FinTech ecosystem and in financial solutions and financial inclusion. However, somehow they ended up actually only including 30% of the population. And so when we look at that as MNOs or as telcos, we're saying, how can we now actually address the other 70%? So what is our ambition overall as MTN is to say 50% of the people that are excluded should actually be included within the financial services space. And that's what we're gunning for. We're gunning for making sure that we include more and more people within that space. And obviously by inclusion, our formula is saying inclusion ultimately is equal to economic prosperity. And that's what we've seen time and time again, whether it is case studies done in Kenya, whether it's case studies done in Ghana, and so on. We see that financial inclusion, even at its basic level, actually results in some form of economic upliftment for the people that participate in the system.
That's fantastic. And I hope inclusion goes beyond just access to products, access to wallets, but actual usage, right? Because historically, it's really been about how many people have an account or how many people have a wallet, but it has to move beyond that to the point of how many people have access to affordable solutions, appropriate solutions that they can actually use that are relevant to their context. Right. So I hope MTN is thinking that way to a usage point of view and financial services that they can actually use in their current context.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a framework that we use, which we call CHASE, for all our products and how we think about digital inclusion, including on the MNO side around connectivity, which actually goes through affordability, the handsets themselves. If handsets are all costing $2,000, right? No one is going to have access to them. So we've actually worked hard to actually even get the price point very low to about $20 in order for people to have access to internet solutions. So if you look at our CHASE kind of framework, then it goes through each one of the models, and ease of use, education, and things like that is definitely core to what we do. So appropriateness of solutions and how people are using the solutions is important. So when we talk about MTN and we say we've got 42 million active customers on Momo, I'm not counting the ones that are just registered. I'm counting the ones that have been using in the last month, right? So we are very, very specific. I mean, our CEO actually talks a lot even about our connectivity, that we just shouldn't look at population coverage. We actually should look at people covered. Right? Because when you say our population coverage on network is X, is 90%. What if that there is 10% or 20% of the people that live in 10% of that uncovered area? So we talk about people that are covered by our network as well, because it is about impact. It is not about rollout.
Okay, that's good to hear. And Bila, I'm coming to you, and I'd really like to understand Africa's Talking. You said you operate in 18 markets. Currently, you're in Kenya, but you're operating in 18 markets, and you enable, I think, infrastructure, right? And enable startups as well as companies to connect to your infrastructure. But let me give you an opportunity to tell us more about that and your priorities as Africa's Talking.
Okay, thanks so much. I think very much in agreement with what Yolanda has talked about, inclusivity. So when I think about what defines Africa's Talking and why do we exist, what drives us every day, it's fascinating. Just given when you think about our name, we're very much driven around the whole Africa problem. We're quite deliberate about ensuring that we engender Africa in everything that we think and do. But the question is stepping back and saying, this continent has some really, really key challenges. I mean, I think that goes without saying. And for us, the question has always been, okay, what are ways that we can use technology or at least enable it, make it a lot easier for technology to be used to solve these problems? And so the way we think about that is now, and we've sort of picked the software developer as, we think about the software developer as a key driver to helping push the technology agenda on the continent. And basically what that means for us, and I guess for the continent, is we've looked at the software developer and said, these developers can actually come up with some very interesting solutions. So when you think about any tech problem does require a software developer to build something around. But then what are the challenges that then the software developer would face in terms of getting their software out or the application out there? We started off with communication, and the reason being we felt that at the end of the day, no matter what you build, it's very important that you're able to communicate with clients. So, use of basic things like SMS or USSD or just other services that telcos provide. But if you think about how easy it is for anyone to just walk up to a telco and say, hey, can you give me connectivity to your SMS gateways or USSD gateways? It's quite challenging. I mean, even when you think about the larger enterprises, not to talk about startups or individual contributors or software developers. And so we set out on a journey to say, what if we made it our work to go to the different telcos, get the necessary registration or in some cases government authorization, because you do need regulatory approval in a lot of countries, and connected to the telcos, and then actually expose the telco infrastructure as a very simple to use APIs that software developers, startups, businesses can connect to Africa's Talking and not have to worry about I need to reach my customers in Kenya, so I have to talk to Safaricom and Airtel. Oh, we're about to expand to Uganda, I have to go talk to MTN, Airtel. In that market, I have to go to Nigeria, and then, so you can imagine just how hard that is for anyone trying to build a solution. And so we found that, if we can actually make that easy so that software developer or that business just needs to talk to Africa's Talking, and we worry about the hard work of connecting to the telcos and keeping that infrastructure going. We actually realized we are solving a problem and accelerating the adoption of software applications built up on the continent. And we started off with communication, and then very quickly realized, payments is an important aspect of that loop. So starting to think about, okay, how do you then begin to expose and make it easier for software developers to then embed payment capabilities to whatever it is they're building. And we'll continue to kind of keep adding. So right now we've added IoT as our newest product. We'll keep adding around that, but again, very much driven around what are the things that a software developer needs to build an application, and what are ways that Africa's Talking can make that a lot easier. So the developer or the business just really focuses on solving the problem rather than trying to figure out, okay, where do I get my payments from? Where do I get my communications from? Where do I get, that's what I'm talking about, that infrastructure layer. And I think going back to your question around priorities, for us, as I said, inclusivity is an important thing. And the other thing is just, how do we address issues on the continent? So again, as I said, how do we make it easier for anyone to address problems that this continent is facing from a technological perspective, and more so relevant problems? And so we believe that if we make this infrastructure just that much easier to access, that much more affordable to access to a software developer, they then can in turn be the drivers of change, because they can then now begin to build solutions a lot more easily. And also because, and I think it's going to be the last point, because we're sort of enabling this infrastructure on a country by country basis, we then believe that software developers know the problems that their countries face more inherently than, say someone else coming from the outside. Although, I mean, there's nothing wrong with adopting a solution from the outside if it solves a locally relevant problem. So again, it's just empowering that, because we believe that genius lies everywhere. Problems are everywhere, but genius lies everywhere. So we can sort of just help that genius sort of amplify what it is they're able to do and build for problems in Africa. We think we can drive towards a more prosperous continent.
Fantastic. I love what you said, that genius lies everywhere. That's fantastic, whether in Senegal, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana, or in South Africa, right? It lies everywhere. But also you are really going into the fact that, let Africans also solve African problems, right? When you're closer and really understand the problem and you're living the problem, you may be better suited to then solve the problem. And you're also creating that connectivity and infrastructure for the whole of Africa to connect. Because part of the challenge is that if you're a startup in Cote d'Ivoire and you want to, build a business for West Africa, you then have to go into each country, get a license and a partnership with each country, and that slows startups down, right? Or it slows even innovation down. And, we need to work more as a continent, like Europe, like the United States, and get to a point where there's connectivity across the continent that all may be included. As Yolanda said, the point is to get everybody included. But maybe let me challenge you on this inclusion element, right? We've been speaking about financial inclusion for over 20 years now. I remember when I was at Fundamo in 2011, we spoke about financial inclusion. And at the time, it was working with mobile money and really enabling people to use mobile money, right, in various countries and commercialize it in various countries. And it was largely about payments. right? And Kenya is a great poster child where, 98% of the country is really running on M-Pesa. But with that, people are still don't have access to financial inclusion, even in Kenya. And Bella, you can confirm that you have smallholder farmers in Nakuru who still, have challenges when it comes to accessing credit, accessing insurance, in the outer skirts outside of Nairobi. So maybe perhaps let me challenge you both that, when you look at inclusive fintech, what does that mean? Number one. But also, are you looking beyond the capital states? Are you looking beyond Nairobi or Lagos or Accra? Are you looking beyond those capital states in those countries?
Want to go first?
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, cool. No, that's fine. I guess, yes, mobile money actually did evolve out of peer-to-peer kind of framework, right? And then slowly we've actually migrated up in the value chain. So in fact, there are some interesting studies again around financial inclusion versus financial access, right? What they found is, for example, that if someone actually has a Momo account or a mobile money account, they are more likely then to actually go on and actually open a bank account. So we actually are not competing with banks. We actually have a symbiotic relationship based on data, right? And then when you look on the other side, then the biggest question was, can then this actually deal with financial inclusion? Because that is financial access, right? Financial inclusion, as you said, is, can I get a loan, right? Can I get a loan to facilitate my business, to do this and so on? And as MTN Momo, we started a while back trying to actually solve that problem. We started solving that problem by partnering with third parties, with banks and so on, and actually giving $100, $200 loans to individuals in order to be able to do the kind of stuff that they need to do. And that's the other thing that is an insight. We look at the West for sort of bigger solutions around lending. And actually, when you look at the amounts that are involved in order to transform someone's life, we're talking about $100 to $500, right? We're not talking about $10,000 for someone to start a business. They actually want to start a trading business. They start with those kind of monies. And those are the kinds of stuff that we've already been doing. Daily now we are giving about 70,000 loans to that community of people. However, even what is our bigger ambition? Our bigger ambition right now is to actually roll out what we call bank tech. Basically, us as MTN actually have our own team actually who have developed our own scoring algorithms and everything. And basically that would allow us to give loans to people because we understand their behavior. They do not have a formal bank account or formal accounts where a third party can get comfort about their credit worthiness. But we do, right? Today we lend people money, we lend people airtime, and they pay back. The loan loss ratio on airtime lending is sub 3-4%. So people are actually paying. Your credit loss ratio on credit cards is north of 15 to 17%. We're talking about people that pay, right? However, they have no access to this to lending. So we are solving that problem by actually developing this. So as we speak right now, about 2 weeks ago, actually we got approval from the central bank in Uganda to actually roll out that product. It's taken longer than we wanted, but it actually now we've got the approval and we will be rolling that out to customers, and then let's see how that works. And the idea behind it is really around, again, this financial inclusion. As telcos, we actually have, I call it muscle memory from our connectivity business, because we remember prepaid was born out of South Africa. And that was to solve the problem that we had, which was only people with credit cards could actually have a cell phone contract. I don't know if you remember those times, but if you didn't have a credit card, you couldn't have a cell phone contract. And through innovation around this whole issue of saying we need African solution to African problems, then we're able to come up with prepaid. And prepaid today is used all over the world, but it's an innovation from here, right? And it's basically saying that if you understand what are the key constraints of your people, then you actually you're actually a solution for that. The fact that today, you know, when you go to America, you go to Europe, no one actually understands USSD. They're like, what's that, right? But we used 2G network, which was our constraint, right? Because we didn't have like 3G, 4G, but we needed financial inclusion. And we used a solution that is a 2G network solution, which many would say is archaic. Yes, it is, but it works. You know, a lot of people that are transacting in Kenya right now are not on a feature phone that is sending money on feature phones like you see in other countries, right? In the developed countries. They're doing it on a basic phone, on a feature phone. And that's why I was talking about the Chase framework, because for us, it is really important that our solutions are practical and accessible, they are affordable, and they are easy to use. The ease of convenience is actually really important. So when we look at the whole gambit of that, that's what we're trying to solve for, and how then this the whole financial services have evolved. We're now doing remittances as well. We're doing Momo Pay, where we're actually working with merchants, you know, and basically they pay, someone actually goes in and pays their goods through Momo Pay. We do so many things now. We've got insurance, we've got so many other things.
It's not an MTN advert.
Yeah, I'm just telling you. I mean, and by the way, we're not the only ones, right? We're not the only ones. It's around financial inclusion. That's what we do.
I understand. I can tell you have a lot of products, a lot of services. I understand. But what I'm really excited about is that you're finally leveraging your data to develop alternative scoring as well, right? Because you've had access to data for many years, right? And you're finally using that to understand transaction behavior and really develop an alternative scoring scorecard in order to extend credit to the unbanked or underserved communities. I don't know, Billa, if you have anything to add to that. You know, she spoke about, you know, merchants now can get access to payments, and in Kenya you have Lipa na Pesa that works quite well, where merchants receive payments from M-Pesa. But going back to my question before, was access beyond Nairobi, right? Mm-hmm. As Africa's talking, do you provide access in other markets beyond Nairobi? Because we really need to get to a point where we actually include those outside city.
I think there's a couple of questions in there, but I'll try and answer just collectively. I think, as you rightly pointed out, there's definitely a distinction between financial access, financial inclusion. I mean, because I think people conflate those terms. And a lot of times, just because someone has a mobile phone and has access to M-Pesa or has access to Momo or, you know, whatever the mobile money component is, we assume they're financially included and they have, you know, financial access. But in a sense, those are just tools. That's just infrastructure. Again, going back to the fact that, yes, I can receive money on my phone, but someone has to be willing to provide the loan, as we were talking about, like if it's $100 that a farmer needs to do. And that's probably not in the purview of a tech provider. There's probably a lot of other players that need to come into play and say, you know what, I want to understand farmers in rural Mozambique or in rural Malawi and see what are their, you know, payments, you know, what are their crop cycles, how do they get paid, and how do we build interesting instruments that then maybe say, you know what, these guys plant maize, they get paid at this time of the year, so I'll give them a loan, but expect that, you know, the payment will be done 6 months, you know, and not necessarily structured the way a regular loan would be. And so I think what I'm trying to get to is, for us to really solve the whole idea of financial inclusion and try and make sure that it's actually inclusive, again, we can't run away from the different agents playing whatever role they need to play. And it could be everything, it could be anything from government, from different financial institutions, etc. So I'll give a quick example, again, going back to your question. So one, as Africa's talking, we provide access to anyone building anything for as long as a telco can get there or a financial institution that we're partnering with has access, you know, can get there. People using our services will get there. And so that means if you are working in Kenya and use our services, you can reach anyone in Kenya for as long as, you know, because the 3 telcos that work in Kenya, you know, get there. Okay. But if you think about, I'm just going to give a quick example around, there's been a lot of proliferation of mobile lending in Kenya. And I think that's starting to take shape in a lot of other markets. And a lot of the people who actually do mobile lending actually utilize Africa's talking infrastructure, both for the communication part, and also for the financial part. But then recently, over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of debate around, is mobile lending really helping, push towards, financial inclusion? Are the interest rates too onerous? Are they actually geared towards the right thing? And so the central bank has had to step into that debate and actually start, right now there's conversations around, should we put in like, interest rates caps? Yes, no, I mean, we can have arguments on whether that's the right thing, but I think what I'm trying to get to is, until you have people looking at the actual reasons why people don't have access to finance and actually trying to come up with specific solutions, then tech just becomes an enabler. And I think we can't get away from we can't run away from the work around what's preventing Africans from getting access to financial inclusion. So I think Yolanda, for example, mentioned something around credit referencing. And I think before we tried to build credit bureaus that were quite, reminiscent of what the US has, but we don't really have that. So someone has to come in and think about, okay, what's a different marker of credit worthiness that we can attribute to, say, a farmer in Kenya or an urban young person who doesn't have employment, etc. So so I think my point there being is there's still a lot of hard work that needs to get done beyond the technology, but the technology helps because it just makes it a lot easier to innovate around things.
Thank you for that. And thank you for making the point about responsible finance, right? Because there is one part of creating access to lending. And as you rightfully said, there's a lot of companies like Branch and Tala that enable micro lending or micro loans. But we also need to think about responsible finance, right? Because, we don't necessarily want to create indebtedness in emerging markets or in Africa specifically. But maybe let me speak about, in the spirit of accelerateHER, right? Let's speak about women. Let's speak about, are you enabling access for women, right? Access to digital financial services for women or access to FinTech products for women? And anyone may take that.
I think again, because we are, when I think about our role, is because we are sort of a platform provider, we're quite, in a sense, dependent on what software developers build on top of our platform to then reach, the different audiences that we think we need to reach. But however, having said that, I think partly because of being a woman and sort of trying to understand some of the challenges that women face, there's a lot of deliberateness around trying to see how do we, one, even just encourage software developers who are women to build, because hopefully they will build stuff that, might help women. Again, I always see the fact that if we make it easier for anyone to build an application, then hopefully we're making it easier for anyone that's trying to reach a woman to do it. And so I think the more we make it easier to build stuff, I honestly believe that inherently women will get involved or will get included in whatever it is that we build. Of course, do we need to go an extra step further to think through what are the unique challenges that face women, or what are the unique challenges that make it harder for women to access credit, if that's the case? Yes, of course. But then again, as I said, it's probably not necessarily a tech problem. I think it now becomes a question of how do you design solutions? How do you think through, if you're coming up with a credit facility and you're trying to be a lot more inclusive to women, are there barriers in a particular country? So, say a country where women need an ID to withdraw money, do they have the ID? Do they, I know of communities where the husband keeps the ID of the woman. So, so I think that there's some intricacies that I think you cannot really think through if you're trying to figure out how to access women or how to provide, financial access to women. But the way I think about it, at least the initial step is, let's just make it easier to even get financial access. Let's build the technology, let's build the innovation. Then I think on top of that, you can now begin to layer solutions that are more specific towards women.
Thank you. And maybe the last question, because I can see we're running out of time. Last question is to you, Yolanda Tuba, to the women out there who want to also be the group digital officer of a Pan-African company. What advice do you have to women who want to be you, who want to be in those positions, who want to get more into FinTech or technology?
The first thing I would say to them, there is no one who gets anywhere without passion, right? First, let the passion actually shine through. Be curious. And, it's not going to be easy. So persistence is one of the key characteristics that you're going to have. So how do I frame for someone who wants to be in FinTech, in digital? I've said to everyone, the barriers to entry have been lowered, right? Technology has enabled that. You know, now there are APIs. I mean, even with us, with Bilha as well, you know, providing APIs that actually allows you to connect to your solution that you've built in your garage, right? Is possible now. It wasn't possible 10 years ago. It wasn't possible 15 years ago. Now it is. So take what you have, start where you are, and actually start developing solutions that are relevant for the problems that you see around you, whether it is collection of electricity and payment of electricity. It can be that simple, right? And then you slowly graduate into the more complex kind of services. So that's my first advice. Curiosity and passion has to be part of it. There is a part that is about skill set and capability. And around skill sets and capability, no one has mastered what are the skill sets of the future. So it is important just to be teachable, right? Be willing to pivot. You're talking to an accountant. I'm just a chartered accountant that has pivoted into technology, right? So you can start anywhere, but be willing to pivot towards a different direction. So if you actually keep your mind open around it, don't say I studied psychology, therefore I have to be a psychologist, or I studied maths, therefore I have to be this. That will actually give you a good direction around pivoting your skill set. And then the last element is around actually networking, right? If you want to play in a specific space, you can't sit in a corner and actually think things are going to happen around you. You're going to have to get up. You're going to have to be an active participant in your own destiny, and then go there and actually say, who are the people that are playing in the space where I want to play? I decided to go onto boards of technology companies as an accountant, right? A long time ago, long before I was even employed in a technology company. I was a board member. I was just a non-executive board member, but that was because of my curiosity. It was only then after that I actually then became an executive in these companies. So it is important to play in the space, in the vicinity, in the vicinity of where you actually want to end up. So those are the three kind of things that I would say, because as I said, no one has the monopoly around what are the skills that are required or anything like that. Anyone, anywhere can become a player within the space.
Fantastic. You heard that, lady. Be passionate, be curious, be deliberate about your career, put yourself out there, and as well be teachable, right? She said that there's no expert at the moment in terms of the future. We are all learning as we go. Be curious, but also be teachable and be humble. So with that, thank you so much, Yolanda. Thank you so much, Bila. And thank you so much, accelerateHER. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Lebo, and thank you all so much for such an insightful and lively discussion. Really, really terrific to hear your thoughts, and we're very grateful to you all for spending time with us. And of course, could not agree with you more, with the key takeaways being to make sure you remain passionate, deliberate, curious, teachable, and humble. Something I think other world leaders could do with taking on board. Anyway, a huge thank you again, and please do stick around with us for our next session coming up in a couple of moments.